Now we're going to start the sanitizer process, and we're going to be using that for pretty much everything today. Like I said before, you can make one batch of this sanitizer and use it on everything all day long. So that's what we're going to do now. We'll mix this up. We'll use this we'll sanitize our keg here. Even though we're not going to use it today, I'm just kind of doing it to show you. This will be re-sanitized before it gets the beer in it. But we're going to use this to transfer the sanitizer into, first I'm going to put some in this bucket, and I'm going to soak all my faucet parts in that sanitizer for a little while. Even though they've been cleaned, they still need to be sanitized. Then we'll also use it to we'll take the auto siphon, we'll pump the sanitizer solution from this into the clean carboy, and in that process it'll also sanitize the auto siphon. So once that's done and everything's all sanitized and ready to go, we'll set up our beer. Like I said, it's been fermenting for 1 week, so we'll set it up in the secondary fermenter, and we'll pump it into there. Now, I think I said in the other videos, if you aren't dry hopping, you don't really have to worry about using a secondary fermenter. The reason I'm doing this is we're going to add, I believe it's another 1.5 ounces of hops for dry hop for this beer. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and transfer it into that secondary fermenter. And we'll also go ahead and check the gravity and see how much it's changed over the past 7 days. Okay, so we got our keg filled up with sanitizer. Go ahead and use the auto siphon. Like I said, this will get everything all sanitized. You can see it's pumping through that, so the auto siphon is going to be sanitized. We'll dump some of this. Actually, I'll probably just go ahead and do it now. Dump some of this sanitizer in this bucket so our keg faucets can be cleaning. And then we'll probably let this sanitizer sit in this carboy. Once I get it filled up, I'll shake it around, make sure it comes in contact with all the surfaces, so we can good and sanitized. Then we'll let it sit about 30 minutes, and then we'll come back and we will transfer our beer into it, and you can see kind of what the beer looks like at this stage. Okay, we got our carboy sanitized. As you can see, there's still foam in it. That's going to drive you crazy your first few times. Don't worry, it's all right. You can let it sit a little bit to get that foam out. It'll start to liquefy. But don't let it bother you. It isn't going to hurt your beer. So we're going to take a look at this beer. This beer actually over fermented on me the very first night, and that's why the top of this bucket's kind of nasty. It's just kind of a sugary mess. So before I crack it open, I'll go ahead and I've washed my hands. So now I'm just getting sanitizer on my hands and arms just in case I come in contact with any of that. There won't be any harm done. So let's pop this off, and these lids are extremely hard to get off. They're very tight. They've got an O-ring in the lid. And be as careful as you can with this, because any shaking or anything like that can introduce oxygen into your beer. You don't want that. And I will warn you, it is going to look gross. It's going to have, you can see the lid, looks pretty disgusting. It's going to, where that krausen was, and I'll show you, and I might not be pronouncing that right, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but where that krausen was, which is the foam that occurs when it starts fermenting, you can see it's left all that hop sludge behind. And that's what your beer looks like after a week. It's still fermenting a little bit, but I still see little yeasties popping up at the top. We'll go ahead and transfer it right after we take a gravity sample here. Okay, we're going to take our gravity sample. I've got my turkey baster here. Works great. I'm going to keep my auto siphon from falling out. Turkey baster works great. I've had it sitting in the sanitizer solution here. It's pumped full and it's coated. So we'll go ahead and pull a sample off this just to see where it's at. I mean, you don't really need to mess with this. If this is your first beer, it's going to be really hard for you to not get into your beer and check it. You're going to want to do all kinds of stuff to it. Do yourself a favor and just leave it alone and check it at the end. But just so we can see here, I'll go ahead and take a quick reading here just to see where it's fermented out to. And this fermented really fast and hard, and it blew my airlock off. So let it float down there. We're at about 1.020. So it fermented extremely fast. Preferably you want a slow fermentation. That one just took off, I think, because of that huge yeast starter I had. So we can look real quick. I showed you the math to do. We'll just check and see what it's at. We said 1.062 minus 1.020 gives us 0.042 times 131. So we're at 5.5% right now. We calculated it should be around 6.2% by the time it's done. So there still should be some fermentation going on. We'll get it in here as quick as we can. I usually don't like leaving the lid off like that and just leaving it setting out. So we're going to go ahead and get it transferred in. I'm going to have to re-sanitize my auto siphon. It fell down on the sink. So we'll do that. Then we'll get this transferred, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's in the secondary fermenter. Okay, so I have this transferring. I noticed when I was doing it that I had a little air leak up here around where my tube meets the siphon hose. So you really want to pay attention to that. You don't, like I'd mentioned before, you don't want any oxygenation going on in your beer. It gets oxidized, it's going to taste like cardboard. So if you have an air leak in this, like I said, I need to replace that tube. That's probably why I was doing it. You're going to want to make sure you seal that off or get it to quit bubbling. It should be good now. Beer level's going down and I don't see any bubbles. I wanted to mention something else I don't know if I mentioned in the last videos. As you can see how dirty this bucket is. You obviously, whenever you're done transferring, you're going to want to clean that bucket out. With these buckets, they're food grade plastic. You do not want to use anything abrasive. Just use a wet paper towel or a wet cloth. And I mean, you can use some sort of, some cleaner of some kind, but you don't want to use anything abrasive. If you scratch the plastic, it kind of just makes a pocket in there where bacteria can get. If you ever get an infection in your beer and it happens to be in this fermenter, you might as well just throw the bucket away because you're not going to save it. So this beer is transferring. I'll show you here in a minute when it's done, and we'll go ahead and get this cleaned up, and then we're just about done for the day. So get ready for the next part, and we'll show you here in just a second. All right, so there we are. We got the beer transferred into our secondary fermenter. You can see it's got some of that star sand foam on it. Like I said, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. This time I'm using something a little different. We're still going to be using the airlock, which I've got some of my sanitizer over here. But what this is, this little carboy cap, and it's very handy. It's almost a safety piece. It pops over the top. You can see it's rubber, so it's pliable. But you can just pop it over the top, which that's been in sanitizer as well. And then you can just put your airlock right in the top of that. Now it's got another hose over here, or another outlet over here too. I guess you can use that for a racking cane, or I've actually put 2 airlocks in before in case one failed. So anyway, that's nice. So anyway, we're done with this. Look at our thermometer. It says it's sitting at about 68 degrees. That's just perfect. We'll just let it hang out there. And then here in about 2 weeks, we'll go ahead and put some dry hops in. I'll put some vodka or some sanitized water in my airlock, and then I'll very gingerly carry that back to its resting place where it will stay and won't be bothered until we get ready to siphon into the keg. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like after that fermentation happens in your fermenter. Now, if you recall, the yeast we put in, I did make a yeast starter, but it all basically came from one package of yeast. Now, I'll show you the size of the packet of yeast. This isn't the exact packet of yeast, but that's it. This is full to it's about that much full, so you're looking at a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of yeast for 5 gallons of beer. And when the yeast gets in there and starts eating those sugars, it produces more yeast. And that's what that is. That's the yeast cake. That's the trube, as I was corrected as far as pronunciation. But you can see, I mean, that's just one handful of the yeast and stuff that beer made. And I mean, you can also see there's some hops residue mixed in there. It's nasty looking stuff, but that's all part of the beer making process. Once you do it, it won't gross you out, and it actually, believe it or not, that smells just excellent. It smells like a sweet bread. So anyway, we're finished up here. Check back here in a few weeks. I'll try to cover a little bit of the dry hopping, and then we'll cover transferring it into the kegs and carbonating it.